Stay tuned for a special edition of the Multifamily Deal Lab podcast.
What actually happened was I just said, we know we want to hire someone like yourself. Can we just consult with you? You can be a consultant to help us hire someone because you're going to know the questions to ask. She helped us hire someone. It didn't work out. That person stole from us. We caught it quickly. And at that point, it just so happened 2.5 years that we'd been developing this relationship. At that point, she said, I'll do this. I'll take on this role.
Welcome to the Multifamily Deal Lab podcast, where we dissect a deal before your eyes and ears so you can discover the strategies and tactics that got each deal to the finish line. Strategies and tactics that you can put in your own toolbox to get you to the closing table. From sourcing the deal, raising, due diligence to the property takeover, Multifamily Deal Lab shows how you too can get the deal done. And now here's your host, David Lindahl.
Everybody, welcome to Multifamily Deal Lab. I'm your host, David Lindahl. And on today's podcast, we have Jesse Worcester. Jesse and his brothers came into our system, into our community. I don't know, how many years ago, Jesse?
I know we were reading about you and as early as 2009. And I think shortly thereafter started going to events and got involved.
Yeah. So I think the process was you got the book, then you end up getting the home study system, and then you went out and did like 400 units, I believe.
Yeah.
And then you came to an event, and I remember meeting you and your brothers at the event and saying, yeah, we did 400 units off the home study system. And I was like, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And then you came to the event and got involved in coaching and started coming to the different events. And then you went off. You sailed away like some people do. And
we've kept the same. I mean, it's a testament because we've literally kept the exact same business model. And so, we've continued growing, but really using the same system, the same principles as when we first started.
And you're now up to how many units?
So we've purchased a little over 4,000 units, but we've had 800 units that have gone full cycle. So we own and manage 3,200, but 4,000 total.
Nice. So I say we reconnected just a few weeks ago, and that was because, so this happens a lot of different times. So people come through the system, they'll get educated, and then they go off and, they get really busy in their business and they stop coming to the events because they're so busy. And then, a few years later, we hear from them again and they've exploded.
Right.
And that's exactly what happened with you guys. And that's excellent. So give everybody your background story, where you're from, what to do. You guys are a unique situation. You're three brothers.
Yeah.
And then how you get into your first deal.
Our background is my brothers and I, we grew up in Eugene, Oregon. Father was a lifelong pastor, mother, a third grade school teacher. So lower middle class, but sports was kind of this thing that brought us together. And I always say that was kind of the foundation of our business because what we had with sports was this shared, really just obsession. And we spent, basically our entire childhoods up through college. We all played small college ball with this shared passion where if we're not playing, we're practicing. If we're not practicing, we're talking about it. And that just transitioned as soon as we got out of school and basketball, that transitioned from sports into business. So started our business in 2006. And our first deals, we start out doing single family homes, duplexes, that kind of thing. And by 2009, I really see that as the real impetus or the real beginning of our business because that's when we started buying our larger unit properties. Our first actual deal was a 60-unit deal called City View Lofts, or we renamed it that. And it was a no money down. We actually got $80,000 from the bank to buy it. The owner was underwater, and our whole pitch was we could take this over and we could turn it around. And so it was nice because we didn't start with any of our own money. So we were raising money, even on the single family homes, we were raising money from investors from the get-go. And so that was a nice kind of larger unit property to be able to get into that we didn't have to raise money for. But about 6 months later, we bought a 96 unit.
Well, hold on. Let's stick on the 60 for a minute. So what made you jump to the 60 did the opportunity present itself? Did you start getting interested in multifamily properties at the time? Was it the I'm interested in multifamilies and therefore I saw the 60, or was it I saw a 60 and I decided to learn about multifamily?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one thing I'm very, very passionate about talking about is just scale and company scale. And one of the most important elements of scale, in my opinion, is to start with something big in mind. And so for us, it was a foregone conclusion. We knew we wanted to have thousands of units. And so it was just a matter of time, I would say, until we knew we were going to get into larger unit properties. So it was once we had 150 units, that was how many we had of small unit properties. And so, we definitely were reading your materials and realizing, okay, there's a playbook that we can follow, and this is something that's doable, and we know we can do it. And so, I think a real important distinction is we had that big picture goal in mind kind of from the very beginning. So it was a natural thing for us to continue growing. So we had started out with single family, then duplex. I think the largest we had when we bought 60 was like 16 unit or a 20 unit deal. So it was definitely a stair step growth.
Yeah. Even a 16 unit deal from singles and duplexes is a big jump.
Yeah.
Because as you know, every leap you take comes with fear and anxiety and a little bit of the unknown. And then you get there, you get comfortable, and then you look at, okay, what's next?
Exactly.
I think it's until you get to like 150 to 200 units, and then that fear and anxiety starts going away. And then all of a sudden you see like a 700 unit portfolio. Yeah. And it's like, oh, all right. So now how do I analyze this? How do I take this down?
Yeah.
But okay, so you did the 60, and what needed to be done to that particular property?
So it had a bad reputation. We knew we needed to, first of all, change the reputation, but we had a rehab. We redid a bunch of the main hallways, redid all of the units, flooring in all the units. I think looking back on it, I would call it a light value add now. For us at the time, it was a significant value add. And so, yeah, I go back to kind of a common theme in our earliest of years was being willing to do whatever it took to be successful. And so there were elements of the rehab that we didn't necessarily understand, but we had the ability to talk to contractors and just ask 101 questions. And there's a point where if you work long enough and you put in enough time, it starts to make sense. You're like, okay, we can't put fancy tile in this whole place. We ended up doing like a VCT tile throughout the whole place. And we just asked a lot of questions, and we're like, what's the best product we can put in there for, what's that, cost and benefit analysis? Probably didn't even know what that term meant at the time. And so just a key at that time in at season of our business was just being willing to put in a lot of hours and ask a lot of questions. But all of the different elements of the rehab, we knew we had kind of a limited budget. So it was like, we're going to do the best we can with what we have. And we had a small team we had a couple maintenance guys who were employed by us. And so we did all of the work in house because we just couldn't afford to hire contractors. We hired out, subbed out a little bit of it, but, and that was the first time that this is I think a real important distinction. That was the first time that we could ever hire someone in the property management industry that just blew us out of the water in terms of her experience. So that was another kind of thing that pushed us over the edge to want to go to larger unit properties, is we knew our calling wasn't in property management and that there were a lot of people out there that had way more experience than us. And so we hired someone who they're no longer with our company, but would just have still close with them and have a soft place in my heart for them because they were with us for a number of years, and we're just being able to that's kind of going back to that theme of scaling. We knew that the only way we were going to scale is by finding people who were smarter than us, who we could leverage their time and expertise. And so that was another part of that deal. So we hired the person, I think 30 days before we closed on that. And I'll never forget, she had that property. We all were working there together, but she deserves all the credit. She had that property leased up and turned around in a very short amount of time. I think we completely turned it around in like 3 months.
All right. That's what I want to focus on during this particular podcast is scale.
Yeah.
So, and how you go from where you were from doing the single family and then all the way up to having a portfolio of 3,200 units and doing 4,000 total. So when you guys first started, you started flipping, and were you holding single families as well?
Yeah, we always had this, our kind of origin material that we read like Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And so we knew we wanted to have cash flow was like really big focus of ours. And so every property really that we've ever bought, we've always bought it with the intention of holding it long term. But there's plenty of situations where we've ended up selling just because it makes sense. But on our single families, I don't think we'd sold anything at that point. So yeah,
and how many units did you have on the singles?
Singles, I call them smaller unit properties. We had 150 units, and it was a total of 50 properties. So the average unit size was about 3 units, but it was everything from single family homes up to our largest was about 16 to 20 units.
Okay, so you start off with the 3 of you. Mm-hmm. What were the different roles that you all played?
Boy, well, we were from Eugene, Oregon, and we all moved out. So our brother Paul moved out. I moved out shortly thereafter, and then Joel moved out a couple of years after. And so
you're talking about moving out to Kansas,
moving out to Kansas. Yeah, that's where we've been ever since.
Why did you choose Kansas?
We had a connection, and it was actually a pretty easy decision. We just ran the math on how we could cash flow on the coasts. Mm-hmm. Versus we had a connection in Kansas City, and we just ran some numbers, and it was night and day. The ability to cash flow, just the cost of living, the cost of rent. I remember the math that we did was we found that we could buy for as low as 30% of the cost of where we were from in Oregon, and yet we could still get 80 to 90% of the rent. So simple math there. It's like if you want to cash flow, we knew we were in the wrong state. So.
All right. So you separated your roles out from strengths? Is that what you did at first?
So I really have to emphasize just this. There's a season where you have to wear so many different hats.
Oh, yeah.
It was a constant juggling of the baton. We all together always made buying decisions. So we came together and it was like, is this a good deal? And we would usually go with the most conservative view. So if one person was like, the most we'll pay for this duplex is $40,000, and the other person was 38, and the other person was 36, we said we're going with 36, and that's the way we would have that be our deciding factor. But definitely over the years, my brother Joel has kind of a real strong suit in managing others, and so he's had a very operational overseeing the team. But in the early days, we didn't even have a team, so that's something that morphed over time. Definitely in the early days, I'm kind of a quick learner. I always joke that I was like the spackle of the business. Wherever the biggest hole was, I was jumping in. If it was a new property we were buying, I was jumping in and working on that. If there was something going on with our taxes, I was jumping in and going and working on that. And then our brother Paul was always his kind of spearhead role was acquisitions. So he was always the one spending the most time just looking for new deals.
All right. So
that shifted a lot over the years. We've been, it's a decade plus. And so a lot of shifting of roles though.
All right. So you hire your first employee. Who was it? What were their assignments? And at what size were you?
So we hired our first 2 maintenance people. They were part-time. And I think out of our first 8 hires, only 2 of them were even remotely successful. So I think that's a good lesson for people to hear. I remember I hired someone. This was right in those early days. And after hiring them, I realized that they didn't know how to use a computer. I mean, talk about not a great job on my part of properly vetting that person. And so it was very quick, it's a lot of the work that they had to do was on a computer, and it ended up not working out pretty quickly. So I'm a huge believer of the theme of being quick to fail. Failure is inevitable. And we were good at let's get out there, let's fail, and let's not make that same mistake, 2, 3, 4 times in a row. But that's an example on those hires. We said we need help and we're going to hire someone. And so it took us a while to get good at hiring. But yeah, the first 2 people that we hired that stayed with us for a period were maintenance guys. And that was definitely just an area that we had the least amount of knowledge.
How many units were you at, do you think?
I think, 20 to 30, something like that.
All right. Okay. So you had about 150 of the smaller unit size deals. Then you jump up to the 60?
Yeah.
All right. So then when you hired that manager, was that the next skill level that you hired, or because you said you hired 8 maintenance guys, a couple of them stuck? Was there anybody in between those people and the manager that you hired?
So we had 2 maintenance guys, and then I think by the time we were at 150 units, we had at least another 1, and 2 of them part-time. Yeah, we had kind of scaled up, and at that point, at 150 units, we had like a maintenance supervisor with 2 people underneath him, and he would work with any of our contractors or anything like that. We had scaled up on the maintenance role, and we had help in the property management area. So we had people who had done some leasing, people who had done some of the administrative part, but none of them had really stuck. And so this hire was someone who her experience was running, 200-300 unit properties. She could run a whole team, the maintenance side, the construction side. She actually had a lot of construction experience and all the administrative. So she basically, her pitch to us when we were interviewing her, she said, just give it to me, give it all to me, and I will run it all for you, which was music to our ears. Music to your ears,
but how much fear involved was there in that?
We had tried. It was actually. It's funny when you say fear, because I think of fear being associated with a risk, but there's I think a lot of people don't think about the risk of not taking action. And I see a lot more risk of, like, it would have been way riskier for us to not take that action, because we would have been basically committing ourselves to doing the same thing over and over. It was more like we were happy to take the risk, and it was like, let's just have a plan B if this doesn't work out. So I think all of my brothers and we've always had this approach of, I think it's a greater fear of not taking action. And so probably lower than most in terms of the amount of fear we had in that decision.
Yeah, I think what I was referring to is the fact that you are handing everything over to one particular person, and if they don't work out, then that's not good.
We were very hands-on at this point. I mean, we're all working in the same office. So this person had the capability to take it all, but if they weren't working out, we would have known it, pretty quickly. So
hands-on, trust but verify.
Yes, very much.
All right. If you go to davetoday.com, I have got a free book offer for you. And it is my iconic Multifamily Millions book. I wrote this as a sequel to Emerging Real Estate Markets, but this has been the start of many, many of our students' Multifamily Millions. So many people were inspired by this particular book and continue to be inspired by, because it's foundational information that gives you the awareness, the foresight to know that you can become a multimillionaire, and the step-by-step on how to go do it. Now, this book retails on Amazon for $23. You can have it for free. All I ask is you pay shipping and handling of $7.95. And you can also get some free bonuses when you do, and also autograph it for you. Those bonuses are, number 1, the 27 ways to buy multifamily properties with no money down. There's actually 104 ways in here. You hand it to your management company. They go out and do what it says. And then in doing that, you keep your property leased up and you keep that cash flow coming in. Another bonus I have is the Deal Flow Playbook. This is a playbook of checklists for all the different things that you're going to be doing in your multifamily deals, step by step. I learned a long time ago that if you do not follow a checklist and check things off, you miss things. And those are the things that are going to cost you money. So everything that you do in sourcing deals, underwriting deals, raising funds for your deals, taking over the properties on your deals, to the nitty gritty, the lease audit on your deals, to preparing for the exit of your deals, everything has a checklist. you get all those checklists as a bonus, and that's free. And then I mentioned I wrote the book, Emerging Real Estate Markets. I also have a poster for you, and that is the Emerging Real Estate Markets poster. It gives you the 4 stages of the emerging markets. It gives you each particular phase, the key characteristics of those phases, and down below, it tells you what your key strategies should be for that particular phase. So you can just simply put this on your wall, and with that, you can determine what your market is, where it is in any particular phase, or if you're looking for emerging markets, which markets around the United States are actually emerging. And then from there, you can make the most amount of money in the least amount of time with the least amount of risk. And as you know, investing in multifamily properties and becoming wealthy, that wealth is created through appreciation. So that's why we are giving you the emerging market cycles as well. So multifamily millions, all the bonuses, just pay shipping and handling, and you get it now. So how did you? So she's used to getting 200 to 300 units, or managing 200 to 300 units. So why did she want to come and manage your particular operation?
We definitely sold her on. We have big plans, big goals. She took about a 35% pay cut coming to join us, but she was moving from the heart of Kansas City to a sub-market. We started in a smaller sub-market, a population of 100,000, about 45 minutes north of Kansas City. So she knew she was intending to take a pay cut. But even at that time, we were one of the largest owners of property in that city, city of called St. Joseph, Missouri. And so we were probably one of the few options that she had. And she had an opportunity to really take over the reins and have a lot of control and a lot of autonomy. And so, yeah, we definitely sold her on, the potential. That's a common theme we've had. If we look back over the years, we've had multiple periods where we hire for someone that technically we could easily get away with not having at that period, but we're hiring in preparation for growth that we know is about to come. And so that was just one example where someone has to believe that you're going to, if you hire in that situation, they have to believe that you're going to take those steps and continue growing. And I think our track record up to that point was, hey, these guys are buying quickly. I mean, they're doers. They're not talkers.
That's a key point that you made, because you're hiring for the future.
Yeah.
It's not where you are now to where you're going to be. And that's the smartest way to hire. If you read the book, Good to Great.
That's one we're pretty obsessed with.
Yeah. And they constantly talk about that, about hiring for the future. And,
exactly.
And it pays off, certainly pays off.
Yeah.
All right. So, and the benefit of bringing in somebody like that is they bring in systems and processes that are already working or proven. So you want to talk about that a little bit, how that changed your business?
Yeah, systems is something that I'm really passionate about. And what I've learned about systems is there's a spectrum, and you've got these behemoth companies that definitely at times can over-systematize. You think of the slow red tape process of like a large bank or something like that. And the complaint is, well, they're not very nimble. And then you've got the just absolute startup where there's no systems. And yes, they're nimble, but the complaint is it's really hard to scale. And so what I found is for each different department and for each different division that we have, you have to look at where it is in the growth cycle and put systems in place that are appropriate for where it's at. So at that point, we had no systems. It was all just in our head. And our kind of backstop was we were there watching everything that was happening. And, something is not going to fall through the cracks because we're right there. When she came on, we didn't put in a bunch of systems ourselves. She was the system. And so there was a trust factor there where we said, we're just going to trust her to do our thing. But we fast forward 5+ years from that time, and we realized, we can't have, because we continued growing, and we realized, we can't keep things in where it's all the information is in someone's head. Oh, yeah. And so that was something that, we didn't do it the right way, so to speak. That's something that we're actually now, we're at over a decade into our company, and now is a period where we're really going company wide and putting in more systems. But that's something that I think historically we've done. It's not been a strength of ours. Is we know systems are important, but we've really emphasized, which is another part of scale that I'm really passionate about, is people, great people. So we've really emphasized having great people. But in order to really scale, you not only have to have great people, but then also document everything really well as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. So you went from 60 units. Did you say 115 was the next one?
96 was the next, which was just later that year. It was like 5 months later. And then 107 just a couple months after that.
All right. And so now you have 3 larger properties, a lot of smaller properties, and you've got the property manager in place. Now you've got on the site at the 100 unit, the 107 and the 96.
Correct.
So what system did you need in place in order to I'm assuming that they're on-site employees now.
Yeah.
Yes?
So we had at the 60 unit, that became our corporate headquarters, and we operated the 60 units and the scattered sites is what we called them, the other 150 from that location. So that was one staff, and that's 210 units total. Then the 96 unit was a dedicated staff, and then the 107 unit was a dedicated staff. But that same gal was at that point now kind of starting to become more of a regional supervisor, because she had other property managers that she had to oversee as well.
Okay, good. And then you go so what happened the next year? How many properties did you get?
Boy, from there it just continued scaling. That at 100, at like roughly 400 units is when we grew down into Kansas City. So we were at the point where we said, we know every single property in this submarket. We know who the owners are. We know why they're selling and what price they'd sell for, or why they're not selling. And we said, if we're going to keep growing, we have to expand our radius of where we'll buy. And so we expanded down into Kansas City, bought our first 150 units, then 185 units. So it was probably another 300 the next year.
So now you're close to 1,000.
Yeah,
800.
We're coming up on 1,000. They start to blur together. we each year. If you look at our history, I love to use the analogy of the domino illustration, where you start with a domino that's a toothpick, and if every domino can hit over another domino that's about 150% of its size, and 29 dominoes later, and it's the Eiffel Tower. Or the Empire State Building, excuse me. And so that was real. If you look at our growth, we're always growing just a little bit more than the year before. So it kind of has that curved growth pattern.
So you're close to the 1,000 unit mark. And what I know, my own investing, and then watching people do this through the years, teaching since 2002, that's an inflex point where you need to have certain infrastructure in place in order for you to get to the next point, which is about 2,500.
Right.
If you don't have the infrastructure in place, then you are at risk of imploding.
Yes.
And if you do, then you can start scaling successfully. You want to talk about, what you needed to have in place for 1,000 and what you needed to change to get to 2,500?
Yeah. So I feel like this is the exact same conversation as when we were at 150 units and we were hiring for what we knew needed to come. And we hired someone who had the skill set. So we were at 150 units, and this person, their whole world that they spent time thinking about was 200 to 300 units. So we knew, just based on their experience, we knew we were hiring someone that had the capacity to handle more growth. So the same thing goes at 1,000 units, which is you have, our structure right now is we have regional supervisors. Regional supervisors typically can oversee, 800 to 1,000 units. But once you go beyond that regional supervisor, lots of people in the industry call it something different, but director of asset management or president, someone who their whole focus is overseeing multiple regional supervisors. So someone who their world is 2,000-3,000 units. And so our growth, it's just one of the common themes that we always say is we invest in assets. That's what everyone knows. We buy multifamily real estate. We invest in other assets now as well. But the number one asset that we invest in is people. That is the core. That's the foundation. And so at every juncture, it's always who is the right person or people or team that we need to have in place that can handle this growth. And so we probably at each stage, you could argue, if you were trying to play devil's advocate, we hired a little early, but that's essential if you're wanting to continue growing. And so, yeah, it was right around 1,000 units that we hired a president, and I think it was over 2 years I had been wooing her, I first started out and befriended her, and then we had a lot of similar interests. She was, I can't remember her title, but she was overseeing between 3,000 and 4,000 units. And 2 years, we just built a friendship, and I would call her and ask for advice and what actually happened was I just said, we know we want to hire someone like yourself. Can we just consult with you? You can be a consultant to help us hire someone because you're going to know the questions to ask. She helped us hire someone. It didn't work out. That person stole from us. And yeah, we've got plenty of stories, yeah. So that person stole from us. We caught it quickly, moved on. And at that point, it just so happened, it was like 2.5 years that we'd been developing this relationship. At that point, she said, I'll do this. I'll take on this role. And so we brought her on.
What was her experience? How many units has she been?
She was 30 years in the industry. And her whole experience was she had, I'm trying to remember the history, but she had overseen 3,000 plus units for like over 10 years. So that was like a total comfort zone. So her whole world was, how do you successfully manage, her direct reports were anyone, over construction, a head of maintenance as well, and then a couple regional supervisors. That's kind of the whole world. And so her world was systems, company culture, things that when you're at that regional supervisor level, when you're at 1,000, you're overseeing 1,000 units, sometimes you haven't had the time or the experience in the industry to think about those things that would be necessary when you have, a couple thousand units.
Excellent. So you did it in terms of growing your own management company as you got larger. A lot of people will start off managing themselves, and then when they start getting to bigger properties, they'll third party for a while. And then in about 2,500 units, they have a decision to make. Am I going to continue with third party, which the biggest complaint with third party is the decisions that they make don't get acted upon in a timely manner.
Yeah.
And the fact that a lot of times they can't get the data that they need in a timely manner. Those are the two biggest problems with third party management. But then they need to make that decision. Do I go third party or do I open my own management company, which in itself is a huge undertaking.
It is.
And you definitely have to. I remember when we made that decision to take on third party ourselves. Do our own management company. We had a choice between. I think we were at about 3,800 units, and we had a choice between hiring somebody that was managing 7,000 units for I think it was $90,000, or somebody that had managed 12,000 units who was managing 12,000 units for $150,000. And I'm a component of good to great, and we bit the bullet. We wanted to get to 10,000. That was our goal. So we hired the guy at 12,000.
Right.
But unfortunately, true transparency is he got to a point where he didn't know as much as we thought he knew, and he was one of these people that hid some facts, and the whole thing almost rolled over at 4,800 units, 5,000. Because all of a sudden we realized that the data that we were basing our decision on wasn't accurate. And it wasn't accurate because number one, he was getting bonused, and we learned what to bonus on and what not to bonus on after that. And number two, he just didn't want to look bad. You know what I mean?
Right.
So we dissolved that relationship, and then we get into a better relationship.
Yeah. We had a couple stints trying third party management. And our experience was, two things. One, I'll talk about our experience, and then one, my view looking back on it for someone who's kind of in that juncture of making that decision. So our experience was we knew that the performance of what we had was so essential to being able to buy more properties that we felt like there was so little room for error And that's more of a just we were willing to put in a lot of hours in those earlier years and kind of do whatever was necessary to make it. I mean, I've done every single role, leasing, and we had some not so pretty units in those early days, but we were out there leasing. We did collections really late at night. I mean, we learned, we had those early properties where it's like, what days people are getting paid on, and the days to visit which properties and which units and stuff. We cut our teeth on that. So that was essential for us to experience it in the trenches and to have done every single role within the company. But looking back on it, I think there is an analysis, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this. But my understanding, we've never third-party managed, but I've talked to other people who have. And my understanding is by the time you have, let's say, 800 units and you could warrant hiring your own regional supervisor, that the vast majority of your time, if you were to third party, the vast majority of your time is spent with that regional supervisor. They're kind of your line of communication. They're the one making the decisions. And if you scale it up and you've got a president. And so we were thinking this as we went, and it definitely validated that we spent, when we had 800 units, we poured ourselves into the person who was overseeing everything, the regional supervisor at that time. And then when we hired our president, we poured ourselves into getting alignment and being on the same page with that president. My understanding is a lot of the time when you're third party managing, if you have 1,500 units, for example, and there's a president, you're interfacing with that president a ton. You're trusting them to do the payroll and to handle the systems and kind of the details. So you get to a point where it's fairly similar. Now, I'm not saying there aren't tons of issues that work their way up, and it's definitely more time. But we kind of realized, especially as we got larger, I think the difference between managing in-house versus third-party managing, and again, because it comes down to holding someone accountable. And so if we're going to really pour ourselves in and hold our president accountable and everything that she's overseeing, kind of the same structure exists when you're third party managing as well. It's a lot of work to hold people accountable in the first place.
Yeah, somebody's got to be dedicated,
right,
in the company in doing that. That's their primary role, is to oversee the asset manager, because if you're either way, whether you're doing third party or primary, it's actually the president if you're doing your own management. But yeah, somebody in the company's got to be, like in my company, it wasn't me, because I am not the detail type of a person.
Yeah.
I do not like managing people. Frankly, I'm just not good at it. I'm the big picture, right thinker type of a person.
Here.
So,
so
when we decided that we were going to, and the most frustrating thing about third party is that extra layer of access to information.
Yeah.
You have it, but you don't have it.
Yeah.
If you have that partner in place that can oversee the asset management side of it going down, then doing it yourself is probably the most efficient way to do it. But if you don't, then third party, you just have to hiring an asset manager to asset manage all of the property managers is a good way to do it.
Exactly.
We're running out of time. I do need to go into what's called lightning round.
Okay.
All right. And I'm going to ask you a series of odd questions, and you answer the first thing that comes to your mind. Okay.
I love it.
All right. First one is, do you like big dogs or small dogs?
Small dogs.
How many hours of sleep do you need at night?
I have flexed up to over 8.
Wow.
I could talk about that for a lot. Yeah. You used to be way less.
All right. Your favorite Saturday Night Live character?
I'm a huge Norm Macdonald fan. So anything that he does or did.
Awesome. What's your favorite movie?
Oh, Star Wars. It's sentimental. The original 3.
Okay. Fantasy's lyrics. Oh, you better start swimming, or sink like a stone, because the times they are. Bob Dylan. You Bob Dylan fan?
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know that one.
How often is it healthy to cry?
Weekly.
Wow. Okay. What's your favorite carb? Bread, pasta, rice, or potatoes?
Potatoes.
If you could ask God one question, what would it be?
What is the meaning of evil?
Interesting. And the
Our
last
father
question
was a pastor and what talked to us about deep theological concepts from a very young age.
Wow. Must have been interesting to be at your dinner table.
Yeah.
All right. Now, last question. If a deaf person goes to court, is it still called a hearing?
Yes.
All right. So that concludes this podcast, Multifamily Deal Lab with Jesse Worcester. And I want to thank you for coming on. It's been great to reconnect.
So good to see you.
We're talking about doing stuff in the future. So it's going to be good. Looking forward to talk to you again soon.
All right. Thanks again for having me.
All right. Take care. And bye, everybody.
You've been listening to the Multifamily Deal Lab podcast, where the deals get done. If you'd like to learn more, visit davetoday.com. And don't forget to leave a 5-star rating and review and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. Thanks for listening.